the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
from the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
So picture this. It's May of 1776.
Right, just a couple of months before the Declaration of Independence.
Exactly. And with these dark clouds of war gathering, the Founding Fathers didn't actually order, the stockpiling of weapons or the drafting of a massive army.
Which is, what you'd typically expect them to do.
Right. Instead, they ordered a nationwide day of fasting and prayer.
Wow.
Yeah. And if we fast forward exactly 250 years, today we are looking at how a modern political movement is trying to use that exact historical mandate to fundamentally shape the narrative of America's upcoming birthday.
What's so fascinating here is the sheer scale of the operation,
Yeah, totally.
This isn't just some historical footnote being mentioned in passing. It's a highly coordinated effort to bridge centuries of history, pull in modern pop culture, and mobilize a massive religious coalition.
Okay.
And it's all centered around a single day.
So today we're doing a deep dive into a massive gathering known as Rededication 250.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge cornerstone of the initiatives leading up to America's 250th birthday.
And the source material for this deep dive is actually a single, very detailed article from May 17th, 2026.
Right, published by Town Hall, which is a conservative news outlet. And the piece is titled, "The White House Issues a Powerful Message of Prayer in Celebration of Rededication 250. It was written by Joseph Chalfant.
Yep, that's the one.
Now, before we really pull this apart, I need to just lay down the ground rules for you listening, because this source covers deeply polarizing current events.
Oh, absolutely.
It involves religion, it involves conservative media, and it focuses on the Trump administration. So because of all that, we are keeping this entirely neutral.
Exactly. We're not here to debate theology, right?
Right.
And we are definitely not endorsing the political viewpoints of the original source material.
No, not at all. Our goal is strictly and impartially to analyze the facts, the quotes, and the specific framing presented in this Town Hall article to really just understand the mechanics of the message being broadcast.
And setting those parameters is crucial for a real analysis, because when you step back from the immediate partisan reactions, you can actually see the architecture of the event.
Yeah, the blueprint.
Exactly, the blueprint. We get to look at how leaders actively synthesize the past, the present, and the divine to construct a cohesive story for the public. It is a masterclass in political and cultural choreography.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the physical reality of the event itself, because the setting does a lot of the heavy lifting here.
It really does.
The article places us on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. On May 17th. And the National Mall is, it's already the ultimate symbolic space in America.
Right, it's where we put our most revered monuments.
Yeah, it's essentially the front yard of the nation's civic religion. And according to the reporting, tens of thousands of Americans gathered there for an all-day event.
Which is huge.
It is. The atmosphere is described as being filled with worship music, prayer, and speeches heavily focused on faith, unity, and Christian values. They aren't in a megachurch or a stadium, They're occupying the physical center of American government.
And taking up that specific physical and cultural space, it's a declaration of presence.
How so?
Well, when you place tens of thousands of people in the heart of the Capitol, singing worship music right between the Capitol building and the Washington Monument, you are visually merging civic duty with religious devotion.
I see.
The medium is the message, right? It tells anyone watching that this particular religious narrative belongs in the very center of the American public square.
And that message was driven from the very top of the executive branch.
Yep.
The Town Hall piece notes that key figures in the administration issued multiple statements supporting Christianity. But the anchor of the whole day came from President Donald Trump.
Right.
He delivered a message of faith by offering a reading from the book of 2 Chronicles. And I read that and immediately tripped up.
Really? Why?
Well, I get reading the Bible at a faith-based rally, but 2 Chronicles. Specifically, he read the passage recounting God's appearance to King Solomon right after Solomon had finished constructing the temple.
Right.
That feels like such a weird architectural choice of scripture. I mean, why read a story about ancient construction logistics instead of something universally recognized like the Sermon on the Mount or a famous psalm?
Well, it is an incredibly strategic choice because it is not about architecture at all.
Okay.
It's about the theological concept of a covenant.
A covenant.
Yeah. A covenant is essentially a binding sacred contract between God and a nation. And for the ancient Israelites, Solomon's temple was the physical manifestation of that covenant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was the ultimate culmination of this massive generational project. So by having the president read that specific text on the National Mall, right ahead of the nation's 250th anniversary, the organizers are engaging in some profound psychological framing.
Okay, so think of this like laying a foundation stone for a building. Reading about Solomon's temple isn't just reciting a story, it's a deliberate framing mechanism.
Exactly.
So is this choice of scripture meant to directly parallel the building of a nation with the building of a sacred space?
They are doing exactly that. They are elevating the founding of the United States.
Right.
They are telling the audience that the American project wasn't merely a secular historical event. I mean, it wasn't just a bunch of guys in wigs signing a tax protest against a king, you know.
Right.
They are framing the nation's origins as a deeply spiritual, covenantal milestone. The reading equates the ongoing American project with the construction and maintenance of a sacred space.
That shifts the entire definition of the upcoming birthday. Because if the nation is a temple, then celebrating its birthday is no longer just about fireworks and parades.
No, not at all.
It becomes a requirement for spiritual stewardship. It demands a level of reverence that a purely political anniversary just doesn't command.
Which is a brilliant way to mobilize a base.
Oh, absolutely.
If you convince people that their country is a divine inheritance rather than just, a political entity, their motivation to participate in its governance becomes a matter of religious duty.
And that connects perfectly to the next major figure the article highlights. Because the overarching biblical metaphor is established by the president, but then they need to tie that ancient theology directly to the American founding fathers.
Right. They need a bridge.
Exactly. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio provided a video address that did exactly that.
Yeah, that was a key moment.
The quote pulled by the article is absolute. He says, "From our country's beginning, for as long as America has embodied freedom and exceptionalism, the soul of our nation has been rooted in the Christian faith."
Notice his choice of the word soul there.
Yeah.
He is not making a legal argument about the Constitution or some historical argument about the Bill of Rights. He is making an existential claim about the fundamental character, the invisible essence of the country.
So Rubio builds this conceptual bridge, but here's where it gets really interesting. The date of the event is what really locks it in.
Oh, yes.
You listening might wonder why they held this massive rally on May 17th instead of waiting for, say, the 4th of July.
Right, the obvious choice.
But the article drops this incredible piece of context. May 17th, 2026, marks the exact 250th anniversary of the Continental Congress, officially calling for a day of prayer and fasting ahead of the American Revolution.
That date selection is the linchpin of the entire operation.
It really is. It's like they're trying to perform a hostile takeover of the historical narrative.
That's a great way to put it.
Instead of acquiring a company's shares, they are acquiring the Founding Fathers' historical actions and just, branding them with their modern political logo.
It's exactly.
I mean, it is one thing to stand on a stage and say, we should pray for the country. It is another thing entirely to say, we are praying today because exactly 250 years ago, the Founding Fathers officially commanded us to do the exact same thing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it creates an unbroken lineage, and Rubio leans heavily into that in his address.
It does.
Let's look at how he frames the mindset of those founders back in 1776. He noted they had, quote, no guarantees of victory. And he painted a vivid picture of them facing dark storm clouds of war looming on the horizon.
Which is so interesting because he strips away the mythology.
Right.
We usually think of the founders as these stoic marble statues who knew they were going to win. But he's pointing out that they were terrified. They were facing the greatest military power on earth and operating in a state of sheer political anxiety.
And that is where Rubio delivers the critical synthesis. He says that in the face of those dark storm clouds, the founders did what Christians have done across place and time for 2,000 years. He says they turned their eyes to heaven and placed their fate in the hands of God. So he takes the political anxiety of the Continental Congress and categorizes it specifically as an act of historic Christian faith.
which fundamentally changes how the people in the crowd view their own modern anxiety.
Exactly. I mean, think about it for you listening. When you hear a politician doing this, it's easy to just brush it off as typical rhetoric, right?
Yeah, of course.
But look at what it actually accomplishes. By anchoring a modern political rally to a specific, historically documented action taken by the Continental Congress, the administration shields its current message from criticism.
Because it's rooted in history.
Right. They are essentially telling their supporters, hey, we aren't doing anything new or radical today. We are just doing what the founders did when the stakes were at their highest.
Wow.
It validates modern political action with historical precedent. If you feel anxious about the direction of the country today, Rubio is telling you that Washington and Adams felt the exact same way, and the solution now is the same as it was then.
It is incredibly effective framing. But, political rhetoric only goes so far.
True.
If you actually want to make this a populist movement that reaches beyond political junkies, a bunch of politicians in suits quoting history isn't going to be enough.
No, you need more than that.
You need cultural buy-in. You need to reach the people who don't spend their days reading historical transcripts. And the Town Hall article gives us a look at the guest list on that stage, which really reveals a fascinating strategy for how they built that bridge.
Oh, the lineup is highly strategic. It reveals the actual mechanics of modern coalition building.
So the article lists Jonathan Rumi, who is the star of the massive hit TV show The Chosen.
Yep.
We also have Cardinal Timothy Dolan and Bishop Robert Barron. And on top of all that, evangelical leader Franklin Graham is heavily involved, promoting the event and quoting Psalm 33, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." Looking at that list, it is an incredibly jarring mix. You have an actor who famously plays Jesus on a screaming show, sharing a stage with high-ranking traditional Catholic leadership alongside massive evangelical figures.
That mix is honestly the most significant takeaway from the entire event.
Really? Why is that?
Well, historically, evangelicals and Catholics in America had massive, sometimes insurmountable, political and theological divides.
Oh, right.
Going back to the Protestant Reformation, through the anti-Catholic bias in early America, all the way up to the controversies surrounding JFK's election, these groups did not historically march in lockstep at all.
They're often actively opposed to one another.
Exactly. But this stage represents a monumental shift. What we are seeing is modern political messaging actively overriding centuries of traditional theological friction to build a unified voting bloc. By bringing in institutional figures like Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Barron, the organizers are signaling to millions of traditional Catholics that this event has the blessing and participation of high-ranking church leadership. These are men with immense theological gravity, they lend institutional legitimacy.
Right. But institutional legitimacy can sometimes feel a bit dry or maybe disconnected from everyday life, which is where Jonathan Rumi comes in, I assume.
Exactly. The Chosen isn't just a niche, small-budget production. It is a massive grassroots pop culture phenomenon. It appeals to a huge, diverse swath of people who consume faith-based media.
He brings a modern, accessible celebrity energy.
Right. Getting the actor who portrays Jesus in the most popular religious show of the decade is essentially securing the ultimate cultural endorsement for a religious rally. It acts as an accessible entry point for younger demographics or people who are just more engaged with media than with church hierarchy.
And then you layer in Franklin Graham quoting scripture about a blessed nation, which speaks directly to the evangelical base's longstanding focus on national spiritual revival.
Exactly. When you look at the whole board, the Catholic hierarchy, the pop culture star, the evangelical leader, and the top-tier politicians, you see a very wide-reaching cross-denominational strategy.
They aren't leaving anyone out.
Right. They aren't trying to appeal to just one specific sect. They are using every lever available, history, pop culture, institutional authority, and presidential power, to project a completely unified front. They are building a mega-coalition united by a shared vision of American history, regardless of their theological differences.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture?
That's the real question.
We started this deep dive exploring how a nation chooses to remember its own origins when a major birthday rolls around. And based on the reporting from Town Hall, Rededication 250 was a massive, highly organized, and deeply strategic effort to answer that question. It utilized the physical weight of the National Mall, the presence of tens of thousands of citizens, and the highest-ranking political figures in the country. They deliberately chose the story of Solomon's Temple to frame the country as a sacred project, and they anchored the entire event to a very real, very specific call to prayer from the Continental Congress 250 years ago.
Right.
And finally, they brought together pop culture icons and leaders from historically divided religious groups to solidify this message. The ultimate goal of all this coordination was to firmly and publicly link America's upcoming 250th birthday to a foundational Christian narrative.
And regardless of where anyone stands on the politics or the theology involved here, understanding the mechanics of how this event was constructed is just vital for you listening.
Yeah, definitely.
It shows us that history is never static. History is a tool, constantly being wielded in the present to validate a specific vision for the future. The way leaders synthesize information, history, and faith shapes the public consciousness in profound ways.
History is a tool. That is the perfect way to frame it. And as we get closer and closer to the actual 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the battle over which tools to use is only going to intensify.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's going to be fascinating to watch how different groups, leaders, and communities across the country look back at the exact same founding fathers. Will they focus on the founders' faith and their calls for prayer, as we saw modeled in this event?
Right.
Or will they choose to highlight the founders' philosophical writings from the Enlightenment? Will they focus on the messy, radical acts of physical rebellion or the specific economic grievances against the crown or something else entirely?
Everyone's going to have a different take.
Exactly. Every group is going to look at the exact same historical timeline and pull out a completely different thread to weave their narrative. Which leaves us with the ultimate question for you to mull over.
Let's hear it.
How does the specific way we choose to remember our beginnings dictate the exact kind of country we are trying to build today?
In the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring values strong and true. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're interweaved. With courage and with honor, we'll hold our ground for freedom, for tradition in this land we found. We cherish our Constitution, the words that set us free, the right to bear arms, to speak and to agree. We honor our forefathers who fought with steadfast might for the dream of a nation shining bright in the night. In every town and village, in every heart and home, we'll uphold our principles, together we'll roam. Through trials and through triumphs, we'll never lose our way, with conservative values leading us day by day. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're interweaved. With courage and with honor, we'll hold our ground for freedom, for tradition in this land we found. So here's to the brave, to the strong, to the free, to the spirit that binds us from sea to shining sea. We'll dive deep into our values, hold them close and true. For conservative hearts, there's no limit to what we can do. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're interweaved. With courage and with honor, we'll hold our ground for freedom, for tradition in this land we found. In this land we found.